Manhattan, on a Thursday night, has a particular kind of quiet, not silence, but the low hum of money moving behind closed doors. Ji-Hoon Park stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his Tribeca loft, watching the rain press itself flat against the glass. 41 floors up, the city looked like a circuit board. Everything connected, everything traceable. He heard Maya before he saw her, the soft click of heels on polished concrete, the faint trail of her perfume, something warm, something that cost more than most people's rent. She appeared in the hallway mirror before she appeared in the room, and for a moment he watched her reflection the way a man watches something he's already decided to let go of. She looked beautiful. She always did. That had never been the problem. "You're going to be late," she said, adjusting the collar of her silk trench coat. Not a question, an observation. Maya had learned early in their marriage that Ji-Hoon was never late. He simply chose when things began. "The gallery can wait 30 seconds, he said, without turning from the window. She came to stand beside him. He lifted a small box from the console table and held it out without ceremony. She opened it, a diamond bracelet, princess cut, set in platinum. The kind of thing that gets appraised, not worn. "Ji-Hoon, for the road," he said. "The Hamptons' air is cold this time of year." She smiled and let him fasten it around her wrist. She kissed him once, clean and brief, the way people kiss when they've forgotten what they're kissing goodbye to. "Sunday," she said. "Sunday," he repeated. The door closed. The building settled. And in the silence that followed, Ji-Hoon stood exactly where she'd left him. In his world, trust wasn't given. It was extended like credit with terms attached and a ledger running quietly in the background. Maya knew this. She had always known this, which made what she was doing either very brave or very stupid. He moved to the kitchen island, opened the tablet. One tap. A live GPS feed filled the screen. The tag read, Hamptons. The dot was on 5th Avenue, moving north, toward Midtown, toward the Pierre. Before we follow Ji-Hoon into the shadows of Midtown, take a moment to join the library, subscribe now, and hit the bell so you never miss a chapter of these high-stakes tales. And tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching this play out from tonight? Now, let's see what happens when Maya enters the vault. Ji-Hoon didn't frown, didn't exhale, didn't reach for his phone. He simply looked at the screen the way a card player looks at a hand he's been holding for weeks, patient, certain, already 3 moves ahead. He closed the tablet, picked up his jacket, straightened his cuffs, and went to work. The vault didn't advertise itself. There was no sign on the street, no velvet rope, no bouncer with a clipboard. Just a narrow service door behind a Chelsea art gallery, the kind of gallery where the pieces sold for 6 figures and nobody asked where the money came from. You needed a name to get the address. You needed a different kind of name to get downstairs. Past the door, past the freight elevator, past the man in the charcoal suit, who said nothing and saw everything the city disappeared. Down here, it was always midnight. Always perfect. Mahogany walls, gold leaf ceilings lost somewhere in the dark above. The air tasted like aged whiskey and expensive decisions. Low music moved through the room like smoke present, but impossible to locate. Every table was lit from above in a tight, deliberate cone of light, the kind that made winners look like royalty and losers look like confessions. This was Ji-Hoon's room, every inch of it. Upstairs, he was a gallery owner, a quiet man with good taste and better connections. Down here, he was something the city didn't have a clean word for. Maya walked into the Pierre like she owned the lobby. She had changed out of the silk trench somewhere between Tribeca and 5th Avenue into something black, something architectural, something that made the concierge look twice and then look away. The bracelet Ji-Hoon had fastened around her wrist that morning caught the chandelier light as she crossed the marble floor. She didn't think about that. Marcus was already at the bar when she arrived, younger by 7 years, louder by every measure. A sports agent with a client list he name-dropped like currency, and a smile that had never once been told no. He stood when he saw her, the way men stand when they want to be seen standing. "You look like trouble," he said. I look like I'm on vacation, she said, and let him take her hand. They had champagne. They had dinner on the 39th floor with the park spread out below them like a painting someone had left the lights on inside. Maya laughed at things, Marcus said. Real laughs, she wasn't performing. That was the part that mattered. She was comfortable here, settled. She felt, for the first time in a long time, like she wasn't being watched. I heard, Marcus said, leaning across the table, that there's a private room downstairs. High limit. Members only. He grinned. My guy got us access. Maya swirled her glass. What kind of access? The kind that doesn't show up on a statement. She smiled, set her glass down. Lead the way. 3 floors below street level, Ji-Hoon was already at the table. He had been there for an hour, not waiting, preparing. There is a difference, and Ji-Hoon had spent his entire life living in it. He inspected the deck with the quiet focus of a surgeon reviewing instruments before an operation. Every card placed face down in its correct position. Every chip stacked to the same precise height. The room had been arranged for 2 guests. Baccarat. The house's game, the one where the odds were always, mathematically, slightly wrong for the player. The dealer's mask sat on the edge of the table. Black, theatrical, part of the casino's mythology, the kind of detail wealthy people loved because it made losing feel like an event. Ji-Hoon picked it up. He didn't put it on yet. He just held it, turning it once in his hands, and looked at the empty chairs across the table from him. Then he set it down, took his position, and folded his hands, and waited for his wife to walk through the door. The high-limit room had its own door, heavier than the others, slower to open, the kind of door that, once it closed behind you, made the rest of the world feel like a rumor. Maya stepped through first. Marcus had his hand at the small of her back, a gesture that read less like affection and more like ownership. The room was smaller than she expected, intimate. 1 table. 1 dealer, masked, already seated, hands folded on the baize like he had been there since the beginning of time. The lighting was tight, theatrical. It caught the gold leaf on the walls and turned the shadows between them into something architectural. Somewhere in those shadows, shapes stood still. Men. How many, exactly, was difficult to say. Maya didn't notice. She was already looking at the table. Baccarat, Marcus said, pleased with himself. He pulled out her chair first, a performance, then settled into his own with the loose confidence of a man who had never lost anything he couldn't replace. He slid a card across the table. Black. No name, just a number. 200, he told the dealer. To start. The dealer didn't respond immediately. He reached for the deck with the unhurried precision of someone who had already decided how the evening would end. He cut the cards once. Twice. Then he spoke. In this room, he said, his voice low and even and utterly without warmth, the cards never lie. He paused. Only the players do. Maya's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. She knew that voice. She knew the specific register of it, the way it never rose, never softened, never gave anything away for free. She had fallen asleep beside that voice for 6 years. She had mistaken its stillness for safety. The dealer reached up and removed the mask. Ji-Hoon looked at her the way he looked at everything, with complete, unhurried clarity. No anger in his face. No hurt. Just the clean, terrible focus of a man who had already done the math and was simply waiting for the world to catch up to his arithmetic. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Marcus broke it, because Marcus always broke things. Whoa, hey, look, man. Ji-Hoon didn't look at him. He dealt the cards. Play, he said quietly. You drove a long way for this table. Marcus played. He didn't know what else to do. His hands weren't steady anymore. The loose confidence had left his body the way heat leaves a room quickly, completely, leaving something cold in its place. He was beginning to understand, in the specific way that men understand things too late, exactly whose room he was sitting in. The shapes in the shadows hadn't moved. They didn't need to. Their stillness was the message. Ji-Hoon dealt with the same mechanical precision he always brought to everything. Card. Pause. Card. His eyes moved between the table and Maya with no discernible emotion, which was somehow worse than fury. Maya hadn't spoken. She sat with her hands in her lap, the bracelet catching the light each time she shifted, and she watched her husband deal cards into a silence so complete it had its own weight. Finally, Ji-Hoon. "Mrs. Park," he said, still looking at the table. The name landed like a door closing. "You told me the Hamptons," he said, turning a card face up with one finger. "I didn't realize Fifth Avenue had such a breeze this time of year. Ji-Hoon, let me. You checked into this hotel at 7:42 this evening." He dealt again. "Table 4 on the 39th floor. The halibut. 2 bottles of the Blanc de Blancs. You always did prefer it to the rosé." He finally looked up. "I own the hotel, Maya. I've owned it for 3 years. You've walked through the lobby 11 times. Marcus pushed his chair back an inch. One of the shadows shifted. Marcus stopped moving. Ji-Hoon reached beneath the table and set a single envelope in front of Maya, cream-colored. Her name on the front in clean type, not handwritten, never handwritten, because handwriting implied emotion and Ji-Hoon had stopped spending emotion on things that couldn't appreciate it. "Prenuptial violation," he said. "Section 4, Clause 9, infidelity. Confirmed. The loft reverts. The accounts separate. The name," he paused, almost imperceptibly, "returns to me." Maya looked at the envelope. She didn't open it. She already knew what was inside. She had known, somewhere underneath everything, for longer than she wanted to admit. Ji-Hoon stood. He came around the table with the same measured pace he did everything, no rush, no theater. He stopped beside her chair, reached down, and unclipped the bracelet from her wrist with 2 fingers. It came free with a sound so small it was almost nothing. "I gave this to my wife this morning," he said. He held it up once, briefly, the diamonds catching the light one last time. "You came tonight as someone else's guest." He set it in his jacket pocket. Guests settle their tabs on the way out. He looked at Marcus for the first time. "Someone will see you both upstairs." And then he walked out of his own room, and the door closed behind him, slowly, with the weight of something that had been a long time coming. The rain had stopped by the time Ji-Hoon reached the bridge. He walked to the railing without hurrying. He never hurried, and stood above the East River, while the city reflected itself in broken pieces on the water below. Manhattan at this hour was all suggestion. The outline of things. The idea of power rather than its proof. He reached into his jacket pocket, held the bracelet over the railing for a moment, not dramatically, not with ceremony, just long enough to feel the weight of it one last time. Then he opened his fingers. It was gone before it hit the water. He stood there another 30 seconds, not grieving, not celebrating, just recalibrating the way a compass settles after you stop moving. Then he turned up his collar against the river air and walked back toward the city that had always, in every way that counted, belonged to him. 6 months is a long time in Manhattan. Long enough for a story to go from whisper to tabloid to forgotten. Long enough for the people inside the story to become cautionary footnotes in other people's conversations. Maya Park, formerly Park, briefly back to Vance before she stopped using either, was photographed outside a West Village cafe in February. The caption noted she had relocated to a 2-bedroom in Murray Hill. The interior design firm had gone quiet. The Hamptons project, apparently, had fallen through. She looked like someone the city was in the process of forgetting, which in Manhattan is the specific kind of cruelty that doesn't leave marks you can point to. Marcus lasted 8 weeks after that night before his largest client, a wide receiver with options and a good attorney, quietly moved to a different agency. Word traveled the way word always travels in rooms where money lives. Not loudly, but completely. His table at Carbone stopped being available. His calls started going to voicemail. By March, he had relocated to Miami, which is where New York sends the people it's finished with. Neither of them had spoken publicly about the divorce. The prenuptial had seen to that. Section 4, Clause 9 was very specific about what silence was worth and what noise would cost. The Nakamura Tower broke ground on a Tuesday in April. 43 stories. Mixed use. A penthouse floor that had already been quietly acquired off-market. No listing, no announcement by a private holding company registered in Singapore. The architectural renderings showed clean lines, dark glass, the kind of building that looked like it had been there forever, even before it existed. Ji-Hoon stood on the helipad of the adjacent building, while the crew worked below, his back to the skyline he had spent 20 years assembling piece by piece. His suit was charcoal. His expression was what it always was, present, contained, giving nothing away for free. His phone buzzed once. He glanced at it. A wire confirmation. 8 figures. Cleared. He put the phone away. Someone had once told him, early in his career, that the market punished emotion, that the moment you started making decisions with your chest instead of your head, the ledger started moving against you. He had never forgotten it. He had built everything he owned on the discipline of that single principle. The marriage had been the one place he had allowed himself an exception. He didn't make exceptions anymore. Below him, the city moved with its usual indifference, 10,000 transactions happening simultaneously. 10,000 people convinced they were the protagonist of the only story that mattered. Ji-Hoon watched it all with the calm of a man who understood that the city didn't care about your story. It only cared whether you could afford to stay in it. He could afford to stay in it. He turned from the railing, straightened his cuffs, a gesture so habitual it had become punctuation, and walked back toward the elevator. Behind him, against the pale April sky, the steel skeleton of his newest building climbed another floor. I don't play games I can't win, and I never bet on a losing hand. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, show your support by hitting the like button. It tells the algorithm that stories of power and justice deserve to be told. And before you leave the library tonight, I want to hear from you. Was Ji-Hoon too cold? Or was the settlement the only way to handle a betrayal of this magnitude? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. The vault doors are always opening, and you won't want to be late for the next chapter. I'm the librarian. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.